So hello and welcome. Happy Wednesday, I guess it is. I'm Frederick Dunn and this is The Way to Be. Today in this video, I'm walking you around my property right here in the northwestern part of the state of Pennsylvania, and we're looking at different pollinator plants and different pollinators, not just honeybees. Look at these sweat bees, for example. These things are new to me, although they came up naturally. They're just here. I didn't plant them. And we're just going to walk around, look at blossoms, look at the condensation here. This is early in the morning. Carolina horse nettle. Nothing's on it right now because it's too cold, but there will be later. Once again, it's a native plant, just comes up on its own. I don't plant it. So some of the things we're going to look at in this video I've planted, some I've not. There'll be some honeybees and there'll be some other pollinators which you might find interesting. So once again, the nettles there. Look at this little guy right here. This is a milkweed beetle, red milkweed beetle to be specific. And the milkweeds are everywhere. We do allow those to grow. I've tried to start it myself. Didn't work very well, so we're just going with whatever pops up. This is a paper wasp. You know, there are hundreds of species of paper wasp. So this one is still cold. Later, it dried out as the sun hit it, warmed up, and flew off. Not like the yellow jackets, which can be annoying from time to time. These are very mellow and laid back. So the goldenrod is actually kicking in pretty good. Seems a little early, but we'll take it. This is hyssop. Now I planted this myself, and that was a bumblebee that was on it. Bumblebees go after hyssop pretty good. Honeybees are not on it yet this year. This is my pollinator habitat sign. I just like to support the Xerxes Society. If you're looking for a pollinator company or a representative or a group that will represent pollinators and diversity, the Xerxes Society. There's your yellow jacket, sound asleep. Thought it only had one wing, but it was stuck to its side. Now this is honeybee on the cosmos. I plant these cosmos myself. We plant them every year, and because they provide nectar and pollen. Look at the corbicula on that honeybee carrying that load of pollen back there, getting the nectar while it's at it. So this is actually a pretty good year. There are some plants that haven't performed very well for me, but what's already in the environment is kind of making up for it. And I hope that you find something interesting in this video. Now, some people like to point out that native and non-native bees don't get along. Well, this is Melissades right here on the sunflowers. And those are Maximilian sunflowers. Look at this little rascal. In fact, I've never seen a honeybee fly up to a flower and push a native bee off of it. I have seen it go the other way, though. Look at the pollen pants on this little native bee. Once again, there's a lot of them. We also have bee houses for mason bees, which are just tubes, made out of bamboo and stuff like that. This has been a great year for those. Now, for comparison, this is the honeybee on the Maximilian sunflower. Now we have a few varieties of Maximilian sunflowers. These are the short ones. They're about 5-6 feet tall. I've got others that are 9 feet tall and not flowering yet. So the good news is there will be nectar and pollen going right into the fall, right into the first frost. Look at this honeybee. Nice close-up. Pollen on its hind legs. You know they can carry 30% of their body weight in pollen. That's a lot. They can also carry 60% of their body weight in nectar. So these bees might be out foraging all morning long. Now look how dark this one is. Honeybees have a lot of different subspecies and hybrids, and dark and light honeybees can be from the same hive. And for comparison, see, we've got a native bee up here. We had the managed non-native honeybee down below. And look, a little hoverfly there watching, seeing what's going on. I don't know what hoverflies do. But I do know Melissades here cover sunflowers all the time, and they really load up with pollen as shown here. They have another name, and I'll show you that coming up too. They're called the Longhorned bee. And when you see how long these antennae are, you're going to realize why they get that name. So once again, I'm bouncing back and forth because I'm assuming somebody might be watching this that isn't familiar with honeybees. So each time we show one, we'll label it, of course, and mention that it is a honeybee, because I've learned that some people, even beekeepers, can look at a bee like this one and go, look at that honeybee. But it's not. It's a longhorned bee. So get acquainted. I hope you'll take a walk outside and look to see what's blooming and what's on those blooms at different times of the day. So during this video sequence, it got up to the low 80s, about 82 degrees Fahrenheit. Look at this. This is coming to the end. Mullein. I don't know how people pronounce it, but it's Mullein. I misspelled that in a previous video. People pointed that out. It's got a bumblebee on it, but I can tell you the honeybees are after these things too. And apparently they grow for a couple of years and bloom on the second year. These are tall. I mean, 12 feet tall. I have a bunch of them. Do you think I planted them? No, they planted themselves. So here's a honeybee on one. And to the right, they're all brown. That's after they've bloomed and been pollinated and nectar had been taken from them. I don't know how significant a nectar source they are for the bees, but they were definitely on them. Here's a honeybee again, and this is common burdock. Some people just call them thistles, but this is burdock. Burdock is a thistle, by the way. If you have a long-haired dog, you don't want them out running around after these things have matured and the blossoms have gone by, because it's just like Velcro. It attaches itself to everything. But as you can see, they're focusing on nectar from these, and we have a lot of it. Again, as a volunteer, so that means it just happens in the environment. Here's a close-up of one of the blossoms here. And for those of you who want the scientific name for it, here it is. And the bees are on these all day long, starting at around 10 a.m. right through till sunset. So it's a lot of fun to look at them. They follow the fence row, because I figure if I let them grow on the fence row, maybe it helps to keep things out. It doesn't stop the woodchucks from coming in and eating my sunflowers, which, by the way, the annual sunflowers are yet to blossom, but they're getting close. So if you've got burdock and things like that, if you can put up with it, if you don't mind where it is, it's definitely a benefit to pollinators beyond honeybees. And the way this one's lit, you can see the honey stomach there. You can see how extended its abdomen is. And remember what I mentioned before, for those who have taken the time to weigh honeybees, 60% of their body weight in the honey stomach alone. Digestion is not taking place in the abdomen of the bee when it's collecting nectar, but it is starting to work on it with an enzyme called invertase, which is going to convert that from sucrose to glucose and fructose later. I know you wanted to know that. This is Goldenrod. Showed it before. We're going to show it again because there are many varieties of goldenrod. A lot of people didn't know. There's early goldenrod. There's a whole bunch of different species. So if you want to really spend a lot of time with very little gain, look into all the different subspecies of goldenrod out there. This is Cosmos again. Now you may wonder, do the honeybees go after one color in preference to others? Not really. Some people will say, well, if it's red, the bee can't see it. Well, they see it, it just looks black to them, but you know what? They're not going to the color of the petals. They're going to that yellow center. The yellow center gets the bee's attention. Look at that longhorned beetle. Remember, I mentioned that before? Look at this rascal. That is a very interesting bee. Now, some of these solitary bees can show up on very specific plants only. And look at this, little tiny, as if that wasn't enough. Here's another native bee. I think that's a tiny native bee. Look how small that is. I think it's going into my little mason bee building. And by building, I mean it's 10 inches tall, 12 inches by whatever, and 6 inches deep, by the way. Bees like that, I guess, for parking their eggs. And they're going to come out again next year. So the numbers are really high. In other words, my solitary bee hotels are full. And they have filled those with eggs and everything. I think next year is going to be fantastic. I put up a brand new one. I think we're going to expand that this year. Also, you know what? They go for the eastern exposure more, because I put them up facing different directions just for kicks. So that is a tiny bee right there. Unbelievable but true. Look, its entire abdomen is covered in pollen. So these are all great pollinators. And you know what? If you grow cosmos, you're helping them out. So the cosmos are annual. I know that people will say that they'll seed themselves and you get cosmos every year. Well, that hasn't worked for me. I have to seed them every year. So look at this bee. I'm telling you, there was a honeybee that came by, and because that flower was occupied by a native bee, the honeybee moved on. See what happened? They're polite. So the honeybees aren't taken over, but we do have a lot of honeybees in this area. All these flowers, everything I'm showing you is on my property. So when we get to clover, for example, later on, you're going to see that there's a lot of bees on the clover. If I see a bee on every 30th clover blossom, then that's almost too many bees. So we want to keep a balance here in our environment, so I'm still trying to cut back on the number of honeybee colonies that I have. And these native bees are showing strong. We also don't use any pesticides on our property. Very important. Now look at this. If you looked at that from a distance, you'd think that's a wasp. But you know what it is? That's a wasp mimic. We're going to see it again later. Don't worry, I know that was quick. There's that little mason bee. And there again, the colors of the petals with their leading lines to the center of those flowers is not as important as the color of the flower center itself. So where the pollen is, it's yellow on all the cosmos. Now look at this black-eyed Susan. What's on that? That's right. It's not a bee. It's not a wasp. It's a fly. That is a mimic. So it says it's a wasp mimic, but it's just using those colors. That is stolen valor. It is wearing colors that will make other predators stay away from it while it goes around and munches on things. Look at it eating the pollen here. Very close up of its little fly mouth parts. Does it count as a pollinator? I'm saying that it does. Look at its feet. Its feet, they have pollen all over them, and this thing is going from flower to flower. And it goes to the cone flowers. So the black-eyed Susan, for example, which this is, the honeybees don't pay much attention to them. So I'm actually glad that we have a bunch of other pollinators that visit them. Now you might be wondering, where did I get those black-eyed Susans? Where do I get the seeds? Where do you plant them from? Well, they show up on their own. So maybe we're thanking the goldfinches for that, because at the end of the year, the goldfinches come through and they eat the seeds from everything. So it's a wonder that we just don't have these flowers all over the landscape. Black-eyed Susans, you'll see them in ditches, fence rows, everywhere. So just watching this fly, I'm glad it stuck around long enough so that we could really take an extended look at it. So what are flies good for? Well, this one apparently, aside from looking really good, is good for pollination. Oh, as if you didn't get to see it enough, I might as well explain. If we're looking at things and wondering, is that a fly or a bee? How many wings does it have? If it has 2 wings, it's a fly. 4 wings, it's a bee. And I would give you a wider view of all these black-eyed Susans. They are spread out everywhere. They just show up right and left. And I'm glad they're here, but I'd be happier if my honeybees used them. But milkweed makes up for that. There's a honeybee on milkweed. We all know that the monarch butterfly uses milkweed, and it depends on it for its reproduction. We have a lot of monarch caterpillars this year, a lot of them. So it's been a good year for that, but the monarch butterfly really doesn't do anything for the milkweed. They don't pollinate them. They just take the nectar and leave their egg behind, and then the caterpillars come. Now this is fun for me. You know, I stopped and stared at this Queen Anne's lace blossom for a little bit, and I thought, there's an ant on it. Now, normally we'd see an ant, we'd move off. So what? It's an ant. But do you know this ant is not just skittering across the top of the Queen Anne's lace flower. It's stopping at every little flower, because these are shallow flowers. They have nectar, and it is gathering nectar. So I ask the question, because it's an ant, does it count as a pollinator? Well, it certainly must be stepping on some flowers and stepping on other flowers, and then in its travels it must be spreading some pollen. It's not a great pollinator, but if I had ultra magnification on those feet, I will bet you that little bits of pollen are transferring around with this black ant. Now this is not a carpenter ant. I've jumped into ants lately as far as trying to find out exactly what species they are, and yesterday I ordered a book on ants because I need to know more. Honeybees are related to ants, and you can start to learn a lot because they use pheromones just like bees do. Look at the antennae on this ant. It is sensing and tasting every little flower, trying to find out if another ant's already been there, if it's still worth its time to get the nectar out of it. And if we start thinking of ants as things that gather nectar and spread pollen, as well as being fantastic forest recyclers. This particular ant, remember, it's not a carpenter ant. This thing lives in a big dirt mound, a big grassy dirt mound that stands above the ground about a foot. And when I asked the question years ago, I showed pictures of them on social media, and people said, oh, those are tumbleweeds. Oh, that's grass that blows. Oh, that's a mouse house, they said. But if you go and cut one open, you're going to get a unpleasant surprise because the guard ants will come out and get you. So ant mounds, maybe ants, should be counted among pollinators as well as great forest cleaners. And of course, we can't leave out clover. This little, I don't know if that's a moth or a butterfly. It didn't spread its wings very well, so I couldn't get a really good look at it. Clover we plant, and of course it continues to grow, and if you mow it off about 4 or 5 inches high, it reblooms. Goldenrod again, honeybee on goldenrod. The goldenrod is a huge nectar flow for us. And asters will also be. We do have some aster family flowers blossoming, but I could not find any pollinators on those yet. And why not? Well, I tell you why not, because there are tastier things out there like this goldenrod. Look at this clover. And this is what I mean. As I pan back on this in the next couple of segments here, you're going to see there's a lot of bees on this clover. And we planted clover. We got the seed from Ernst Seeds. And of course I paid for that. This is not like an advertisement or something. And I give it to the grandchildren, and I make them walk around and do frost sowing in the spring. So we threw clover seed everywhere, and look what happens. I would rather have clover than grass any day. And as long as you mow, hopefully, at night or very early in the morning, you will not be chopping up honeybees when you mow, and the blossoms will come back. Now look at this goldenrod. This is yet to bloom, but look what's going on. I've been paying attention to ants, remember? Look at these black ants again. What are they doing? Well, they're on guard duty because there's aphids in here. And the aphids are damaging the plant. In fact, this afternoon I was out looking around a goldenrod, and all I have to do is look for the tall shafts because they're about 5 feet tall right now. Look at the ones with wilting leaves, and then I'll notice pretty soon that there's aphids in there. And also look at the bees guarding the aphids. Why would they even do that? What's up with this symbiosis here? Well, the aphids damage the plant, and they excrete honeydew through their little abdomens. And who gets the honeydew? These sugar-hungry ants. So, in exchange for the honeydew that the ants can't get from this plant, unless it were flowering, for example, they provide guard duty. Walk over there and grab onto that goldenrod guarded by ants someday. See what happens. They like to bite you. So look at the loading on this goldenrod plant. Now, sure, they're just starting to bloom. That's why we have more bees than goldenrods. And look what's happening. Of course, they're bringing it back. And remember, it's in the 80s, so these hives are bearding. Why do they do that? Well, there's so much nectar coming in, they have to dry it down. And there are bees inside the hive that are foragers, and they're in the way. So what do? They get outside. They hang off of the landing board, under the roof, extensions, hive visors, things like that, so the bees that are venting and drying out that honey can do their job better. Look at this. Every single hive has a cluster of bees on the front of it, including the supervisor's hive right here, which he's very happy to say it's doing very well. So he's going to get a lot of honey finally. Last year he got none. So anyway, look at this New York ironweed. Now this is deceiving because if you're looking through the lens of this camera, we're eye level with the bee on the ironweed flowers. This thing is 5 feet tall. There are even taller samples of the ironweed. It's going up, I would have to speculate, 6 or 7 feet in height. There again, it comes up on its own. I don't plant it. Joe Pye weed will come up later. We have a lot of that around here. I could not find any blossoms for that. So there again, just by letting your yard, don't kill the weeds. If you use weed and feed and things like that, you have no idea what kind of blossoms you're preventing from growing. There is so much diversity out here. I'm very happy to have managed this land for 25 years without holding anything back. And so your honeybees cause a response from the environment. Any other pollinators as well. Whatever they pollinate replicates. So you'll see more of it. What is that? Milkweed. Light pink, by the way. Now you may be thinking, Fred, where did you get the seeds for that milkweed? Well, they're volunteers there again. I've set apart a big segment of my western meadow and allowed it to just be taken over by milkweed. And the milkweed that I intentionally plant does nothing. Swamp milkweed, fancy milkweed, showy milkweed, whatever it's called, doesn't grow. So here we go again with the ironweed. That stuff looks good. And then look at this butterfly. I didn't get a monarch, but I'll take this one. Great Spangled Fritillary. I hope I said that right. So anyway, it is a butterfly. It showed up, and what's it on? That is spreading dogbane. A lot of people don't like it. It's kind of in the milkweed family, but it has white flowers on it, and pollinators like it. So that's my, what is this? That's the western yard looking back. And I hope you enjoyed this. And if you did, don't forget to like it. And if you're not a subscriber already, you're going to want to subscribe so you can see more of the same. Thanks for watching.